Prime Field.
On January 28, 2026, the University of Connecticut ruled freshman forward Blanca Quiñonez out against Xavier. The explanation was familiar, a flare-up of the same shoulder issue that had already interrupted her season once before. Head coach Geno Auriemma called it not long-term for sure. Then came the uncertainty. Could be 3 days, could be 5 days, who knows? But the days kept passing. By February 7th, Quiñonez had missed 4 consecutive games: Xavier, Tennessee, DePaul, and Butler, while UConn kept winning and kept moving. The Huskies were 25-0, and yet their top-scoring reserve was still not in uniform. This documentary examines what that absence signals. Because UConn is not simply trying to survive February, the program is trying to control March. The question is straightforward. Does UConn's cautious shoulder management program create a sharper, healthier, more reliable tactical option for the postseason? Or does the prolonged uncertainty introduce a different kind of risk, positional volatility at the moment when lineups become destiny? The answer begins with the timeline, and with what this particular injury demands from the body, and from a team built to chase a national championship. Quiñonez's freshman year has followed a clear pattern: high-level production, then a pause. In November, she missed an exhibition game in the season opener after what was described as a shoulder tweak. The absence lasted roughly 1 week. She returned to full effectiveness. That history matters, because the current stretch began on January the 28th when she was ruled out against Xavier. UConn won 97-39, but the injury designation set off a new sequence. 4 days later, she missed Tennessee on February 1st. UConn won 96-66. Then came the road game at DePaul on February 4th. UConn won 86-40. Then Butler at home on February 7th. UConn won 80-48. Across that stretch, Quiñonez was visible on the bench, and she was seen in non-contact activity. But she did not play. The gap between day-to-day language and multi-game inactivity became the story. Not because UConn was losing, but because the program was choosing caution even when the schedule offered winnable nights. And that choice points to something more specific than simple recovery. It points to the mechanics of her style, and the stress that style places on a shoulder. Shoulder injuries are not uniform. In Quiñonez's case, the injury intersects directly with her identity as a player. Her offense is built around rim attacks, and more specifically, contact creation. The brief describes a style that relies on dropping the shoulder to initiate contact and gain separation. It is a physical maneuver. It also places direct stress on the joint. That makes playing through it a complicated concept. Even if she can lift and move, the very act that defines her scoring can recreate the problem. That context explains why UConn, deep enough to win mid-season games without her, appears to be prioritizing structural stability over regular season continuity. A second aggravation becomes a warning. A third could become a season-ending event. The coaching staff sits her against lower-tier conference opponents, not as a concession, as a calculation. But a calculation always has downstream effects, and UConn's rotation is built on precision, which means every missing piece changes what the machine can do. Before the re-aggravation, Quiñonez played nearly 20 minutes a game. She did it as a primary reserve, a top-scoring bench option. When a player with that role is listed as day-to-day for an extended period, the coaching staff has to adapt in real time. The brief identifies the adjustment. Workload shifts to other bench pieces, Ali Zabel and Jana El Alfi among them. The objective becomes twofold: keep winning, and iron out rotational kinks without the full complement of contributors. The consequences show up in 2 places. First, in pressure. Without Quiñonez, the 9-deep approach is reduced to 8 primary contributors. That reduces how aggressively UConn can apply sustained defensive intensity across 40 minutes. Second, in the rhythm of the game. The brief note second quarter scoring dips against Tennessee and DePaul, where UConn failed to break 20 points in those periods. The dips are not described as crisis, they are described as evidence of what her minutes normally stabilize. Her role is not only about points, it is about continuity when starters rest. And continuity is what turns close games into controlled outcomes. Yet the most revealing rotation data point did not come on the road. It came on February 7th, when another key forward joined her on the sideline. The Butler game provided an unusual set of conditions. Quiñonez remained out, and for the first time in her 2-year career, sophomore star Sarah Strong sat for rest. With both dynamic forward options unavailable, UConn's frontcourt became the focus. Sarah Williams and Jana El Alfi carried the interior responsibilities. Williams recorded 11 points and 3 blocks. El Alfi secured 11 rebounds. Ayanna Patterson provided limited relief minutes. Ali Zabel, starting on the wing, finished with 11 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 steals. UConn won 80-48. The margin was decided decisive. The structure was different. In the first half, UConn built control quickly. The team led 44-19 at a halftime, but the brief also highlights what becomes visible even in a 32-point win. Without the Quiñonez strong tandem, the front court thins. The positionless fluidity is reduced. The system holds, but it shifts. UConn leaned heavily on guard play, and there were workload indicators. Ashlyn Shade played 36 minutes. Isabel played 31. Depth can mask missing pieces against unranked conference opponents, but the postseason is not built on masking, it is built on matchups, and that is where Quiñonez's specific profile becomes central. The brief frames Quiñonez as a rare freshman archetype, a modern combo forward, 6'2", but moving laterally with the quickness of a guard. Her value is described through 3 functions: switching, cutting, and short roll decisions. Defensively, she enables UConn to switch 1 through 4 without gifting an opponent a mismatch. In film referenced from earlier in the season against USC, she recorded 4 steals. The description is specific: long arms intercepting passes, speed-winning foot races. Offensively, her short roll utility places her in the high post decision space: catch at the elbow, attack the rim, or find an open shooter. The brief ties that processing to her background in Italy's Serie A one with Magnolia Basket Campobasso. In that context, her rim attacks carry more nuance. Spin moves, angle changes, and again, the shoulder drop that creates separation. Auriemma has described her style as an adventure, not as praise, as an acknowledgement of volatility. The brief notes errors of commission rather than omission. Aggressive choices that can lead to turnovers, but also to impact that stretches beyond a box score. In a sloppy game against Providence with 21 team turnovers, she stayed on the floor because she could still influence outcomes. That is the trade. And it is precisely the kind of trade UConn may need against elite opponents. South Carolina, Notre Dame, teams designed to absorb structure and to punish predictability. But film value only matters if the player is available. So the next question is the measurable cost of her absence, and what UConn is missing, even while undefeated. Before the shoulder re-aggravation, Quiñonez averaged 10.7 points and 3.4 rebounds per game. She shot 57.4% from the field and 40.4% from 3. She was UConn's 3rd leading scorer, and she had not started a single game. The defensive contribution was also direct: 1.8 steals per game, often at the front of second unit pressure. The brief cites an elite performance rating, PER of 28.0, relative to 19.6 minutes per game. That profile explains why the question is not whether UConn can win without her. It already has. The question is what changes when that 10.7 points comes off the bench. Against Butler, UConn scored 80 points. AZ Fudd led with 17. 3 other starters reached double figures, but in the fourth quarter, UConn scored only 12 points. The offensive drop-off reflects the reality of the missing primary bench scorer. There were other signals. Butler's Senia Jackson collected a career-high 12 rebounds. UConn's perimeter defense remained disruptive, yet the interior was thinner without Quiñonez's 6'2" frame and Strong's rebounding. UConn's system stays elite, but the margin narrows. And when margins narrow, the value of versatility increases, which brings the narrative back to strategy, and to the possibility that this absence is not simply medical caution. It may be a deliberate ramp-up plan. The report presents a framework, not certainty, a likely target, a clean ramp-up window rather than a single-game cameo. The logic's grounded in UConn's patterns. Bringing a player back for one high-intensity appearance only to sit them again is a strategy Auriemma has historically avoided. By holding Quiñonez out through February 7th, the program created nearly 2 weeks of recovery time since her last appearance on January 24th. The stated goal is risk reduction. Avoid a third aggravation, because a third event could end the season. A controlled return would follow a sequence: full practice participation, then limited minutes, then gradual increase toward the conference tournament. The purpose is not only health, it is dependability. A player cannot become a postseason tactical option on reputation alone. She must be physically stable and integrated into the rotation. The question is when that window opens. UConn's next meaningful checkpoint arrives on February 11th against Creighton. February 11th against Creighton is positioned as a primary indicator. If Quiñonez returns, it would offer 4 regular season games to rebuild rhythm before the Big East tournament in Uncasville. If she remains sidelined, the speculation shifts toward a tournament-only strategy. Either path carries consequences. UConn's capacity to operate 9 deep is not only about Quiñonez. The brief also identifies variables around Caroline Ducharme's migraine situation and Sarah Strong's rest schedule. The front court remains the primary instability point, not in talent, in availability. UConn's undefeated record shows what the program can do in February, but the postseason demands a different standard: rotation certainty, matchup answers, and sustainable pressure across multiple games in a short span. Quiñonez represents a specific answer: a middle ground forward who can play alongside Strong, or replace her without a total loss of mobility. and a defensive disruptor who can change a possession without a drawn-up play. The remaining question is whether UConn's caution delivers that asset at full strength when elite opponents force every weakness into the open. That is where this story ends. Not in February results, in March consequences. UConn's management of Blanca Quiñonez has been defined by restraint, not because the team lacks urgency, but because it appears to be prioritizing postseason longevity over regular season momentum. The brief describes the program's guiding logic. UConn can win conference games without her, but it cannot afford to lose her for the tournament. That distinction shapes everything. The rotation changes, the minutes redistribute, the offense experiences moments of reduced continuity, and the front court becomes thinner when other pieces rest. Yet the broader implication is structural. Quiñonez is not only a scorer, she is a tactical mechanism, a switching forward who protects scheme integrity, a short-roll decision-maker who punishes pressure, a rim attacker whose physical style creates contact and collapses defenses. And that style is precisely why her shoulder is treated as a strategic variable. In a season where UConn has moved at a 25-0 pace, the story of Quiñonez becomes a case study in how championship contenders allocate risk. The national title pursuit is not only about who is best, it is about who is intact and who is integrated. If Quiñonez returns as the same high-leverage, positionally flexible option described in this brief, UConn's restraint will read as foresight. If the uncertainty stretches into the postseason, it becomes something else. A reminder that in championship basketball, even the strongest systems can be defined by the one missing piece they could not control.
Prime Field!